video 8 we did the add page, so we could add data to our database, and on this one our turn is to start looking at how to edit data. Clearly once we can add data we need to be able to make changes to that data if it's needed. There's quite a lot to do for the edit, so you'll actually find this will span across 2 of the videos, but let's have a look at first of all what we first set out to do. Looking at session 6, so this is the add changes, so the edit hasn't changed since all the other pages. Simply we go there, it's the add form on an edit page. The only difference between the add and the edit is that we've got save changes here. The difference here is that under Miss Minnie Mouse, if I go to edit onto session 7, now it pulls up the data. It fails if I click on save changes. Lots of horrific messages. When you see these, quite often you'll go, oh my good god, but actually don't panic about it, it sorts itself out. But that's not for this session, that's for the next session to sort out. The edit page doesn't work. All it does is pull up the data so we can see it here. I can't store any changes. So we go from basically a blank form to actually having the existing data. Let's have a look at the code. Let's have a look at the changes in the code. This is from session 6. We can see that in the title up here, and if I move over top it shows that it's the edit.php page from pages folder session 6. So we're actually looking inside session 6 pages, and there's no difference in this one and session 7 pages. They're all identical card structure. I haven't changed that, and there won't be any need to change that, but there is significant difference elsewhere. If we have a look at the edit page, actually identical aside from the change here from the add page as it was before we made any changes. The action has nothing defining it. We've defined it as a post, and we've got a standard HTML form. We've got the text that appears in the boxes, and if we have a look, that's the text that appears here. And along with that we've got the input box here, the HTML input system. That's a text box, and that's this text box here. Obviously I'm looking at this one at the moment, and we can tell that because there is no value, so it's empty. I've given it a name, and in fact the one I'm highlighting at the moment is not the title one. This is the title one. This was put in there, and it may not make any sense why we've got this, but this type is hidden, which means we can't see it. And sure enough, if we look at the page, you can see that you can't see it, which is a contradiction in terms. However, you can't see it because it's not visible, but if it was visible then it wouldn't be hidden, but it's hidden so you can't see it. So the simple fact is this is the text box, type text, the name of this one is title, a size I've defined as 7, that alters its dimension, so this is only 7 characters long, and value is empty, and that's true with all of these. Let's have a look at how that changes when we come to session 7. So this is session 6 over to session 7. God, that's difficult to say. And we have a look at the code difference, and just like our code difference on add, we've got a change at the top, but much more impactful is this change at the bottom. This is our form, but it's gone from this, there's the form and there's the end form, to this, there's the form and there's the end form. But we've changed a lot of our pages to PHP, a lot of our instructions to PHP. So let's have a look at what we've done here first, because this is the first big change we need to make. Now, as you're no doubt aware from the first video, that the HTML is raw. It's simply sent straight over to the calling browser. PHP is processed by the server, so it makes sense to leave what you can as HTML. So this stays as HTML because then there is no processing. It doesn't have to be processed by the server, so it's quicker. You should only turn into PHP those lines of code that have to be PHP. Keep things as HTML as much as possible to make your pages faster. But let's have a look at what we've done here. So there's the opening PHP statement, and we're using the command echo, which sends things to the screen. So echo sends things to the screen, and we use speech marks or quotations. We've looked at this before, quotation marks, but speech marks are excellent because they allow you to include variables just like this, and they will use the value of the variable. We've still got type equals hidden, but let's have a look at the difference. If we look at the statement here, type equals speech marks hidden speech marks, and yet if I look at the change here, I've got type equals backslash. That's the slash on the left hand side of your keyboard, just above your function keys or your control key. Backslash, then the speech marks hidden, then another slash, and then speech marks again. So the question is, we've used the speech marks at the beginning, so why have I done these slashes? Well, what they tell the system, what they tell PHP, is that the next character after this particular type of symbol should be sent as is. Do not read it as a special command. Without this, if I took that out, then the system sees this as a complete line. That is the PHP. So echo that to the screen. The rest of it becomes meaningless and the program will crash. This says simply send all of this to the screen. Actually not to the screen, but as HTML. As it's being processed, PHP will drop these and HTML will receive the speech marks. So it's a way of keeping speech marks and saying, yes, please, that's exactly what I mean. And there are other characters that you can include. For example, the $sign. If you ever want the $sign, the system's going to read that as a variable in speech marks, but if you put a slash in front, it will read it as simply send the $. So that's the first thing. The only other change to this side, so we've done the echo to the screen, we've put the speech marks in, we've gone through, and I've replaced the value not just with speech marks, but with variable names. All of them have got variable names. So I'm now saying the value is equal to whatever is stored in these memory locations. And the question then comes, where are they coming from? And they're coming from this first section at the top here. The first line says there's a get statement, there's a get ID value being passed. Store that in ID. Well, where's this coming from? Well, let's have a look back at session 7, and it's there. ID equals 3. So what I've done is on the hyperlink, on this hyperlink for this particular page, when it reads this in, when I'm over top of here, if we look down at the bottom left hand corner of the screen, you can see that the hyperlink now says and ID equals 3. Where's that coming from? Well, that's got to be coming from in relationship to the index page. And we can see that the default is to go to main. So if I load up the main page, I can see here that actually I'm beginning to do the same thing. There's the echo, there's the speech, there's my hyperlink for the edit. But I've added this variable to the end, and again you might ask where that's coming from. Well, that's coming from this ID, which in turn is being taken from the query that we originally set up. So this is pulling in the data, and we're using the ID to get the link across. That creates the link that says, okay, well, when I hover over here, put ID 3, but when I go over here, use ID 2, ID 1. This is using the automated number from the database. Does the same thing for delete, the ID 2, 3, 1. Obviously I've made the order there in my vocalization of the numbers. So this is another change to the system we need to be aware of, that we actually have got this main and that we've got the $ID in there. We've also got the slashes to tell us don't just treat these as ordinary characters. So it's really quite simple. Act equals edit, and the ID equals and user's number to identify it. So that's the first thing. We send it as a get, and that's stored as $ID. I keep using the same name. I don't have to, but I am using the same name because it's localized within this page. That potentially could cause me a problem, but actually it's not, so it's not a major issue here. The next line then says the same select statement we've seen before. Select everything from TBL context where content ID equals. We've added a where statement. If we look at the last time we used this statement under main, we had to select everything from TBL contacts. That said get everything from it and go one row at a time, putting the data up. This one now says where contact ID is equal to $ID, and $ID is the unique identifier for one particular record. So this time this select query will go off and only collect the data where the ID is equal to whatever was passed to it. In this case, ID 3. So the system goes off, actually doesn't at this point, it's simply created. So this would now read, after I've clicked on this page, this would now read select everything from TBL underscore contacts where contact ID equals 3. We then execute that query, and the results of that query get stored in the $contact. In this case, the results are all the records that it's been able to pull out, and obviously in this case there's only one instance where the contact ID can equal 3, so we'll have one record. This line then extracts the data. We've seen that before. We had that within the main system down here, MySQL results. But unlike before, we were able to use a loop to go through and start at 0. We've only got one record, so as all database systems start at record 0, we have a 0. Takes the str title, puts it into title, and I use the variables because then I can use them here. We will use the $ID hidden field later on, but that's the first part of the edit. Hope that helps. We'll cover the second part in the next video.